Well, yes, good morning and welcome to the 2026 International Women's Day Breakfast, hosted by the Queensland chapter of the Australian Institute of Architects. It's lovely to see such an incredible turnout at this event, getting to see some familiar faces and some new faces in the audience today. I'm Brendan Sutton from Petalthorpe Architects, and I'm also the co-chair of the Institute of Architects Queensland Equity, Diversity and Inclusivity Committee. But that's a bit of a mouthful, so we lovingly call ourselves Quidditch. I'm joined here this morning with my fellow co-chair, Jerry Dawson. Today, I will be your MC, guiding you through this fabulous event. This is now my third year as co-chair, and it's always been such an honour to be able to help organise this event and amplify the stories of incredible women working in our industry. I'm always so inspired by their journeys and the incredible contributions they make to architecture and our community. On behalf of the Australian Institute of Architects, I would like to start this morning's event by recognising the unceded sovereign lands and rights of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first peoples of these lands and waters. I acknowledge and respect their countries, cultures, and their ways of being, knowing, and doing. I acknowledge that architecture and place shaping have existed on this continent since time immemorial. I recognise this place we meet upon today as the home of the Turrbal and Yagara nations. I pay my respect to their elders, past and present, and extend my respect to all other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present here today. I turn now to the thank yous. I'd like to welcome Peter Gardner, our Queensland chapter president. Lovely getting to continue to work with you. I would like to thank our premier event sponsor, Lysart, and their team, Mark Lediker and Andrew Mandela, for their ongoing support. In addition, I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to our event partners, Ace Stone and Tiles, represented today by Jodie Guttingham. Also NAUF, represented by Lorraine Jedid. Their generous contributions have played a key role in bringing today's event to life. Also, thank you to our in-kind supporters, Leif, for their generous gifts of beauty products, and also to Bond University for the amazing door prize that will be announced after the presentations this morning. Thank you again to all of our sponsors and supporters. These events are only made possible by their incredible support and ongoing dedication to the Institute and its members. We now have a video from our sponsor, Lysart.
Every day I have the privilege of working with amazing and inspiring women who serve as role models within the business and beyond.
There's a really great diverse bunch of people that support whatever you need.
Every day I'm inspired by the strong women in our business, forging new paths and career opportunities.
I kind of put my hand up to learn the machines.
People share their knowledge, and I'm also inspired and proud to represent a business that continues to demonstrate a proactive strategy to gender equality opportunities.
The training here has been second to none.
I have worked in a lot of different facets for the company, and they've given me that opportunity to do that.
Working for a business that supports equality, inclusion and diversity will help us work towards a more inclusive world.
Hello, I am back. Now, I hope you're all enjoying your breakfast. Continue to eat. To kick off this morning's formalities, I would like to introduce to the stage our immediate past Queensland chapter president, Caroline Stalker.
God, I love International Women's Day. What a fantastic room of people. Wow, it's so exciting. So who here knows the name Florence Mary Taylor? Anyone? A few. This can be my mission this morning. So in the spirit of creating household names of women who have blazed a trail for all of us, I'm going to say her name again. Florence Mary Taylor, remember that name. Reputedly the first woman to graduate in architecture in Australia in 1904. Florence Mary Taylor was also, she sounds fantastic, she was an aviator, a civil engineer, a town planner. She actually set up the New South Wales Town Planning Association as well as being an architect, editor and publisher. Despite persistent misogyny from the professional establishment, including our own beloved Institute of Architects, she, at the time, she was indefatigable and ran this campaign to be admitted into the Institute, finally 16 years later in 1920. So she's got an interesting story, and clearly things have changed enormously for women in the profession since then, thankfully. And we all stand on her shoulders and the shoulders of women like her who would not take no for an answer. The difficult women. Any difficult women here today? Who insisted on their abilities and their right to practice. In fact, there has been such strong progress since then that I sometimes hear people say or ask, why do we still need International Women's Day? The answer is that women still make up only around a third of registered architects in Australia. We remain underrepresented in senior roles, face persistent pay gaps, and are often disproportionately affected by long hours culture and the sidelining that can come with part-time work. Beyond profession, so we still have work to do. And beyond the profession, International Women's Day also reminds us of our wider social responsibilities. We still live with unacceptably high levels of domestic violence, and in many parts of society, including our own and globally, we're still striving for genuine equality. So I believe we need International Women's Day to... just lost my place slightly. We need International Women's Day to acknowledge past struggles, stay alert in the present and draw strength for the work that still lies ahead. And anyway, it's always such fun. It's lovely. I love International Women's Day. In my mind, International Women's Day stands for progress. I love it because it's hopeful, and God knows we could use a few more rays of sunshine in the world right now. I'm sure we're all feeling that. At a time when division and populism seems to be on the rise, IWD represents the best of us, I believe. Our willingness to invite different knowledges in, to question the prevailing paradigm and resist arrogance, exclusion and bullying. For me, International Women's Day is also about the next frontier. It's not only about women, it's about inclusion more broadly. Just as women in the 20th century fought for a society to recognise the equal value of women's intelligence and experience, the movement can carry a wider message that diverse forms of experience, identity and knowledge belong at the table. For architecture, I believe, that means recognising the value of architectural intelligence from people of all backgrounds and experiences. First Nations people, the first architects of this place, the many cultural backgrounds in our wonderfully polyglot nation, LGBTQIA+ communities and the neurodiverse. For a public serving profession like ours, being inclusive of many forms of intelligence strengthens how we make places. I believe it makes us all better architects. Architecture, after all, isn't only a technical skill, it's a cultural practice. When the profession changes, the architecture inevitably changes too. Different experiences lead to different ways of practicing, different questions being asked and new priorities emerging. And I believe we could actually see that possibly in the work of our speakers today. To be clear, I don't want to box in women architects in any kind of particular paradigm. We've already been boxed in enough. We've had enough of that, don't need it. And yet, when I look at the work of the rising wave of women in practice, I'm reminded of something that Julia Gillard once said when she was asked about the influence of misogyny on her trajectory as a Prime Minister. She said, It doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain nothing. It explains some things. That could be said of our speakers today. The fact that they are women doesn't explain everything about their work, but it probably doesn't explain nothing either. I believe it explains some things. To our speakers and all practitioners in the room, we all know that architecture is a tough gig. But when different voices shape practice and different intelligences inform the work, the architecture we produce as a profession becomes richer, more generous, and more responsive to the communities we serve. Put simply, we all make better architecture. Happy International Women's Day to you all.
Thank you, Caroline. That was fabulous. It's always so lovely getting to hear you talk. So now, I would like to introduce our sort of first official speaker of the day, Karen Onyebene. Karen is an architect and director of Co & Co Architecture, a Brisbane-based practice with a focus on socially responsible architecture and a belief that architects can and should make a difference in the way people live through good design. Karen studied architecture in Brisbane and Milan before graduating with a Bachelor of Architecture, completing her undergraduate thesis on architecture and homelessness. Welcome to the stage, Karen.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for coming out on this very wet day. I'm absolutely honoured to be speaking on the lands of the Turrbal and Yagara people today and in front of a very talented group of colleagues. Technology is not my strong point, so let's hope this works. Okay, good. So KO & Co Architecture, we started in 2013. We're a very passionate small group of people. I could not do my job without my 10 staff that I have on a daily basis. We do a lot of work in education and social and affordable housing. So I often say that we design buildings for living and learning. And I'm passionate about working with people and for people that aren't necessarily our clients. So we work with a big group of stakeholders, but at the end of the day, our end users are the residents that live in our apartments and the children that go to our schools. And seeing the smiles on people's faces when they get moved from potentially transitional accommodation or from, dare I say it, living in a car into our apartments and the joy that they say. We're at a photo shoot a couple of weeks ago for one of our buildings, which will be officially opened on Wednesday, and this lady kept walking past the camera and smiling. And finally, the third time, I said hello, and she said, "Oh, I'm so excited." And I thought, oh my gosh, you're moving into this building. And it just gives me that sort of warm, fuzzy feeling about why we do what we do every day. Why I got into this in the first place, I did study at QUT, and I did a year of exchange in Milan. And in that year, there was a lot of refugees that were coming into Italy illegally. So it's not something, again, the theme of balancing the scales, there's a lot of things that haven't changed in the last 25 years since I've been working and practicing. And globally, the refugee crisis is significantly more now than it was back then, but there was 20,000 people a year that would come into Italy. And I used to look at these people and think, how bad is your life to have escaped that situation, to choose to come and live in a camp that you've built haphazardly of cardboard and whatever materials you could find, and risk getting this burnt down on a weekly basis by the police, who would come through and just move everyone on. So I became really passionate about it. And when I came home, I did, at QUT back then, part of our undergraduate, the bachelor's degree was to write a 20,000 word thesis. And it involved both literature review and primary research. And my primary research was around visiting 2 homeless shelters, one that was Pindari, that was run by the Salvation Army, and the other one was the St Vincent de Paul shelter that's over at South Brisbane. Pindari, the building has now been bought by Terrace, and St Vincent de Paul is still run by Emmanuel City Mission as a homeless drop-in centre, but there's no accommodation on site. And at the same time, I was also researching. David Hinchcliffe was a big supporter of bringing facilities to people who were camping at New Farm Park. And there was a lot of angst in New Farm around this happening. Mirvac was at the time developing the refinery, and they didn't like people living outside their very expensive apartments. So there was this rub of where do we move people? That's still happening now. You watch on the news Moreton Bay Regional Council going through and just demolishing people's tents. And it's an answer that took me into my thesis. What as architects can we do to change this situation? And it's so hard. But the number one thing that I took away from it is just making sure that people, the definition of home for people is very different for everyone. Some people it is an apartment and something quite structured. Other people it's a safe place to put their caravan or a comfortable place to camp. And it's not, for us, I think we sort of think everyone has to live in a building. It's not true, but giving people the flexibility of where they could sleep. I often think that caravan parks used to be places where people did live and establish communities. There's a great story at the moment in Gatton of a family that owns a caravan park, and they've decided not to rent to grey nomads anymore. They've just allowed people to live there and establish a community. That's something that council could start, on blocks of land, actually build a caravan park that's just for people to live long term. We've got a very ambitious homeless house construction target, 53,500 by 2044, I believe. So that's just under 3,000 a year of social and affordable housing that we have to deliver. I don't think there's anyone in this room that would say that we can do that. It's too much. So there's got to be different ways that we can tackle this. So some fast facts and things that frighten me around the level of homelessness in Brisbane at the moment. 2,486 people were homeless and 462 of those were family. The big thing to think about is that the difference between someone being homeless and not is often the lack of support that they have and the family network or the friends that could take them in. Homelessness is not about people just living on the street. It's about people couch surfing or moving in temporarily with someone and getting moved around. For women, domestic violence is a big issue and a big reason why people become homeless, or even worse, stay in violent relationships because they don't want to live in poverty. So they just put up with it. Realistically, even for professional women, if you think about someone stopping to raise children, the reality is that the majority of child raising responsibility often does fall on the female, which then means a reduced level of superannuation, which then means at 55 or 60 when you're retiring, they can't afford to actually buy a property if their marriage breaks down. So all of this stuff is relevant to what we do. In terms of the housing statistics, youth allowance is incredibly low, all the way up to the age pension that's incredibly low. The way that pensions are structured still assumes that people will actually have a house by the time they retire. So their pension is really only paying for their utilities. But if people have to rent, then we're in a lot of trouble. The other area that is under-considered is the people on minimum wage. So there's this spot where there's a cut-off for people to move into social housing, and minimum wage is more than that. So all of a sudden, someone that is working as a cleaner or a butcher's apprentice can't afford to actually pay their rent because the private market has increased so much. And if you even think about affordable housing and the fact that that's 74.9% of market rent, that's still too high for a lot of people. It's talking $1,165 per fortnight as an average affordable housing rent. That's a lot of money if you're on minimum wage. And all of this results in a very long wait list for people moving into social and affordable housing. And then there's people that don't have any income at all, so they don't have a fixed address, therefore they can't get a pension or they can't register properly with government, and that's another real problem. So what I believe in is that everyone does value good design. This photo is from a photographer named Margaret Morton, who surveyed, she's got a beautiful book called Fragile Dwelling, and she went around and did a photography survey of people in New York who built their own dwellings, and none of them were architect designed, but they were home to people. It was so lovely, and it formed part of my literature review and my thesis. So what are we trying to do as a practice at KO & Co? I'm going to talk to you briefly about 3 of our projects that are all in the social affordable space. We're very lucky to be working with a range of community housing providers and state government to deliver some amazing houses. And I'm very lucky to sit on some advocacy panels through both the state and local council around improving design within this space. The best thing we can do is to not identify a building as social and affordable housing. We finished a building in Enoggera a few years ago, and the body corporate of the building across the road all of a sudden looked at it and went and rendered their building so it looked as nice as ours. We finished one in Woolloongabba, and at the site office, at least once a week, people would come and knock on the door and ask the site foreman where they could buy a unit. And I thought, yeah, this is what we're doing right. So Cornwall Street, youth and key worker housing. All of our projects take a number of years to get off the ground due to grant funding, approvals. Approvals less so now, but usually grant funding, negotiations with the state or local. So Cornwall Street was an unused motel on a very interesting site in that it was surrounded by 3 streets. The Southeast Freeway, Cornwall Street, which is quite busy, and then Regent Street. And the unused motel was used temporarily to house refugee people. And it became quite a challenging site to manage, but also a challenging site to develop because it is tight. Now, we had an amazing relationship with council, or our client did, in terms of showing that we could deliver something that was compact with reduced car parking and very functional. So the result was, a block of land that's not much bigger than a house, where we got 32 units. And our client, Brisbane Housing Company, also worked with Brisbane Youth Services to hand over 5 of the studio units to young people that were moving out of homelessness and moving into their first home. So they were fully furnished, which was pretty amazing. 18 car spaces for 32 units, 40 bicycle spaces. And there was also every Brisbane Housing Company building has a small office and quite a lot of common area, which is very good. And this one included rooftop recreation where you could see the city. It was lovely. Very efficient plan. We were lucky that on the edge of the Southeast Freeway there was quite a lot of green space that we could sort of take in as ours and plant out. So we were able to build the car park right to the boundary, and then gave quite a generous amount of landscape back to Regent Street and Cornwall Street. So now if you drive past, the trees are very big and it provides quite a lot of shade to the street. We believe in making entry to buildings equitable for everyone. So you won't see a set of stairs and a ramp in our buildings. You'll see a ramp. Everyone has to go up and down the ramp, because that also works for bikes and prams, and it's just easy for people to get in and out rather than the usual response of stairs, ramp next to it. Ground level common space, and then 2 apartments. And then as we move up the building, 5 units per floor, all with cross ventilation. And surprisingly, it is noisy along the Southeast Freeway, no question, but the units aren't air conditioned because they have a big mechanical ventilation system that draws fresh air into those spaces. So you can open just the balcony doors and you'll see that the units are orientated away from the highway, and it does get good breeze and air through there. The other thing that's important is that every level has a small common space, because it is important that people we provide opportunities for people to build community just within their floor. And then on the roof is an area that people can book out and use. So it started construction in 2019, or 2020, sorry, at the start of COVID, which actually worked well because the builders were very happy that there was no traffic on the road and road closures were a lot easier. And then we finished in 2021. It doesn't look like social and affordable housing. The next project has ramped up in scale significantly. So part of meeting government targets of housing, the buildings are getting bigger. So the Kerwin is 92 apartments, biggest site, 8 stories, still the same principles of reduced car parking, good bicycle parks. We're really moving towards a lot of e-bike storage, so thinking through the safety, fire safety around those issues is important. And still a rooftop recreation area, and every unit is cross-ventilated. Now, that is a big thing because whilst it's... And the units are... we prepare for units to have air conditioning, but the reality is tenants might not necessarily be able to afford to use the air conditioning, so they have to be cross-ventilated, so they're not relying on air conditioning. So this building is a double-loaded building. 3 basements of cars, which is a lot of money into the ground, even that to get reduced car parking. Common area and office on the ground level. But this is the key to the plan. So that corridor space is 3 metres wide, which is big enough to allow people to have crim-safe doors on their units, fire engineered solution, to allow them to keep the doors open and then release on alarm so that people can have natural ventilation at all times. Yes, there's always tenants that choose not to keep the door open, but coming back to my thesis and what's important about it, it makes people feel like they have a choice of how they use their home. Again, 15 units per plate. It's important to provide some community space on every level so that there is security between levels so that everyone has the opportunity to create a network with their neighbours. A few little seats on every floor. And then on the top floor, a bigger rooftop area that's divided up into multiple spaces. Construction started in 2024 and finished last year. Or maybe that was 23, I can't read my slide from here. Now the photo on the right-hand side, that's the corridor. It's a long space. It's about 50 metres long, but breaking it up with colour and depth in terms of creating little recesses for the door is important. It gives everyone their own address. I used to always say I live in the blue unit or the white unit, not just unit 405. And the last project I'm quickly going to talk about is interesting again because it has a layer of domestic violence associated with it in that it's designed specifically for women escaping domestic violence. And around Housing Plus in New South Wales, who are a not-for-profit, developed a really interesting guideline in conjunction with some architects to say what's important and what's different about designing for people escaping domestic violence. And the big thing is security and safety. So you have to imagine you're in a building, you have to, as soon as you walk through that gate, you have to feel safe. So this is a smaller building, 43 units, 1 bed and multi-purpose room. So that's a big difference as well in that there's no 1-bedroom units because there's always the thought that you have to provide a space for someone to sleep over or a child to stay at times. And then there's quite a large area of on-site support services. So a space for social enterprise downstairs, and then the community housing provider has their offices there. Reduced car spaces, but not as much as the other buildings, and also not as many bicycle spaces. Similarly, the floor plan works. We end up with sites where we're trying to squeeze cars under entry levels, which is always challenging to get the gradients right, but 1 level of car parking, and then you enter off the other street to the side. This building has quite a lot of common space, so there's a beautiful courtyard in the centre that's landscaped that is a space where kids can play. There's also an office sort of workspace for people to come and plug in their laptops, a big communal kitchen where they can have big gatherings, and then on every level, a smaller sort of community space. Similar approach to natural ventilation in that the corridors are double loaded in part, but the tenants can open their doors and get breezes coming through. And it will open officially on Wednesday. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for sharing those 3 projects with us. It was really great getting to see the sort of in-depth into some of those floor plans and how those buildings come together. Now I would like to welcome our next guest speaker, Belinda Allwood, to the stage. Belinda is the Managing Director of People-Oriented Design and a dual-trained architect and landscape architect. With more than 2 decades working alongside First Nations organisations, Belinda specialises in co-designing places that respond meaningfully to country, culture and community needs. I have had the joy of working with Belinda as a former Quidditch committee member, so it's my pleasure to introduce her today.
Thank you, Brenda. That's lovely. It works. This is Jabbergai in Yirrakanji country in far north Queensland. This is where I live. So I've come about 2,000 kilometres to be here on Yagara and Turrbal country with you today. I'd like to acknowledge all of the First Nations people that I've been able to work with over the last 20 plus years. Because without their generosity and their guidance and their permission, we simply wouldn't be able to do the projects that we do the way that we do them. So here we are again, March, and we get the chance to celebrate the diversity of women and their achievements with International Women's Day. And this year's theme encourages us to reflect on areas where justice may be precarious in the lives of women. So most of the time, we can sense when something's a bit off and makes us feel uncomfortable, right? But how often do we actually know what to do about it? Having the skills to name the problem, unpack it, and then the support networks to be able to do something about it can be difficult. It can also take time. I don't have a long time to speak, so I'd really like to just focus on a few key concepts that are relevant to today's theme, but also to the work of our practice. Good place to start, equality, equity. What's the difference? How are they related? So, equality assumes a level playing field and resources are distributed to people on that basis. Everybody gets everything equally. Whereas equity recognises that sometimes things aren't equal. People start from different places. There can be systemic, historic or individual differences that cause disadvantage. So equity allocates resources according to individual needs, resulting in a fairer outcome. So we all love a good graphic, right? This one was from International Women's Day in 2023. It's quite a good visual representation of equality and equity. So if you look at them, on the left, equality, each of the 3 people, different sized people, get 2 green soapboxes each to stand on, from which they can share their views or use their voice. Problem is, big fella on the left talks over the other people and gets more say. Relatively speaking, nothing changes. Whereas on the right, with equity, the smallest person, perhaps with the smallest voice, gets to have a fairer say. It's more inclusive. So what's the moral here? Equality without equity, in fact, is not very equal. So I like to catch up on the daily news over breakfast each morning, and recently, middle of last month, ABC political writer Annabelle Crabb unpacked the recent Liberal Party leadership spill, where the only female leader ever in the history of that party was deposed. So Annabelle referred to the settings that Susan Ley had worked in throughout her career as dense cock forests. So as I snorted and tried not to spray my coffee everywhere over my husband, I reflected on the early years of my career and how I could actually relate quite well to this description. Fortunately, things have improved, and there are more pathways for women towards leadership in our profession. But I've got to say, it still surprises me that few practices seem to have really coherent succession plans and pathways for leadership for women. So our practice, this is some of our team, people-oriented design. It's been run continuously by women for the past 12 years. We're in Gimoy, Cairns, that's where our office is. And we created POD out of a desire to be the change that we wanted to see. We maintain focus on workplace culture and team wellbeing, and over the years we've supported many graduates to build their superpowers, to become more confident, to deal with their kryptonite so it doesn't hold them back, and to become registered. We also have a succession strategy. So our interest in social justice is reflected in the projects we do, but it also extends to the organisations, the programs that we support. For example, I'm a board member of SHAC, Shelter Housing Action Cairns, a not-for-profit organisation supporting people experiencing homelessness. Other members of our team are involved in other things like working with youth through PCYC. Another lady volunteers as a driver instructor for people who may not be able to afford or have access to driving lessons. So over the past 12 years, these are the places we've worked. One of the great things about working in regional cities in architecture is you have a very big backyard. We get to travel a lot. So the places we worked, many of them are remote communities where the ongoing impacts of colonisation still perpetuate disadvantage. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are overrepresented as victims and perpetrators of domestic and family violence. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women are 35 times more likely to be hospitalised due to family and domestic violence than other Australian women, and 5 times more likely to be the victims of homicide. So some of the places we've worked, Pomperau with the women there to co-design a domestic and family violence shelter, and with community in Lockhart River to master plan a cultural precinct for their dance festival. That's this photo here. Currently we're working in Kawanyama on community housing, and in far western Queensland on the edge of the desert in Boulia on a community hub. Closer to home, last year we delivered this 77-bed boys boarding facility at a school for Indigenous students. We also delivered the stage 1 and 2 of a facility for alcohol and drug rehabilitation at Yarrabah. And 2 weeks ago, our whole team, except for the lady who's on maternity leave, visited Palm Island for the week, where we're working on a community housing project there. But while we were there, we were lucky enough to revisit one of our earlier projects seen in this photo, which was at Wiggleman Community School. Here's some of our team again on Palm Island a couple of weeks ago, along with our liaison from the Housing Services Centre. So with this work, we've developed a particular set of skills and methods for working places like this, the work we do, which brings us to the next important concept. And it took me a while to learn this one. Life worlds and life conditions. So life world describes a person's subjectively experienced world, so everyday lived experience, constructed through our shared experiences and within our socio-cultural context. Whereas life conditions describes a person's actual circumstances in life. Both these influence how we view and react to the world around us. When you enjoy opportunities, you are afforded the luxury of choice. One of those being the choice to ignore bad stuff that happens to other people because it doesn't affect us. This is privilege. So I grew up in Brisbane. My sister and I were fortunate to have a stable, loving family with a comfortable existence. Our parents stimulated our intellect and encouraged our curiosity. We were afforded many opportunities and were educated in Brisbane's top schools, though we did not learn about the frontier violence that accompanied European settlement. These things were not spoken about. At home, we were never told that we could not do something because of our gender. We were encouraged at every turn to become extremely capable and courageous young women who could aim for the stars. In fact, my younger sister, manifested this quite literally, becoming a noted astrobiologist working for NASA at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Her achievements have been widely recognised, including the rarest of honours, having a life-size bronze statue of her erected at the Brisbane Planetarium. We need more statues of women. So I started working with people in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander settings just over 20 years ago. This work has been humbling and very enlightening. It took a long time for me to understand the concept of life worlds, life conditions, and to learn about privilege and, in fact, to see my own privilege. So in remote communities across Queensland, pretty much all housing is social housing, and there is no air conditioning, even in the tropics. There have never been enough houses in communities, resulting in very high rates of overcrowding, which places a lot of stress on houses, fittings, finishes. There's very limited opportunity for employment, and the cost of food and fuel and energy is very high. Sometimes people cannot afford simple things like lawnmowers. So during the wet season here in Arakoon, yards become overrun with grass. Snake bite presentations increase at the local health centre, and the rate of rheumatic heart disease in places like this is the highest in the nation. And this preventable disease starts with rheumatic fever, which spreads in damp, overcrowded conditions. So environmental health is such an important consideration when you're talking about disadvantage. This brings us to the third concept. What can we do about systemic injustice? First, we really do need to understand what the barriers are to getting justice. These can include not having the skill to identify the problem, the imbalance, dealing with entrenched behaviours and systems of power and control, policy, having the lack of confidence or the lack of support, or simply choosing to do nothing about injustice because our own privilege gives us the choice to do this. But if we're passive, nothing changes. For meaningful and strategic change, we really need to take responsibility as individuals and be prepared to act. So what can we do? And this is the important stuff. We must develop the skills that we need, and this always starts with the individual. This is the work you have to do yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. Understanding these concepts of equity, life worlds, privilege is a really good starting point, and build on that. Also building connections, because advocacy is far more effective when we combine our voices. And remember, be ready for the long haul. Change seldom happens quickly. So we're thinking about these in terms of systemic injustice, but pivoting back to architecture, I still really believe we need more women in leadership roles. So when we interview candidates in our practice, we're really keen to hear about their interest in learning the business of architecture and developing leadership skills. But I tell you what, nothing surprised me more over the years than the consistently low levels of interest in these things, which I think is a real problem. So I'd really like to emphasise, if you're passive, nothing changes. I'd like to encourage all early career architects, women as well, particularly, to get out of your comfort zones, strategically plan your careers and work on the skills that you need to progress. Do this and you will increase your opportunities as well. So here's a younger, more slender version of me way back when I didn't know any of these things, and demonstrating my privilege with the very first motorbike I bought at age 25. It's a Harley Davidson. Wearing not the type of outfit that you'd wear to breakfast at the Carlisle, right? Remember that school project on Palm Island? It's a new administration and hospitality precinct. We co-designed the buildings and the landscape with the school community and with elders with the intent to create a new heart for the school. So one morning, 2 weeks ago, while our team was there, we had the opportunity to participate in a very different type of breakfast. The school runs a read and feed program 1 day a week for primary school age students who otherwise may not have access to books or to breakfast. Let that sink in. We sat there and we read stories with about 30 children under the age of 10 while they had their breakfast, and we examined our own privilege. So stepping back, the way we work in the places we work, we place socio-cultural perspectives at the centre of everything throughout all project stages. So the very dry pragmatics of project delivery always come back to this, connect to it throughout projects. And it can be through things like advocacy. This is an example. We're in Cape York community last year working on community housing, but had the opportunity to look at a proposal for a new subdivision. This was out of our project scope. But in doing so, knowing that community has a high incidence of conflict between clans, we could see that there were some issues here. The property on the right-hand side with the red cross on it has 8 neighbours. Not a good recipe for harmony in a community where there is conflict already. So we were able to advocate for better outcomes, even though it wasn't within our lane. When we work, we work to accommodate cultural practices during a project's life, such as a smoking ceremony and ceremonies at openings, for example. We advocate for Indigenous economic outcomes through participation. We work to embed identity in projects so people feel like they belong. We co-design to respond to country and to support cultural preferences like avoidance behaviour and cultural practices like yarning. This is that boys' boarding facility. There's student artwork representing different homelands across Northern Australia throughout the facility. Each piece is oriented to the direction of that homeland. So a Dari is on the north side pointing towards the Torres Strait. We have work from a student from the Northern Territory on the west, and then Morning Star from Arakoon on the north as well. That's our project work, but outside project work, but still in our team. Our team actively shows support through participation, and we really encourage this too. So on the left is an example of wreath making with elders for the annual Frontier Wars Memorial that's held in Cairns before Anzac Day. And on the right side, each year we join the annual NAIDOC March in Cairns, which marches straight past our office. If you'd like to see more about our work and travels in remote communities, jump onto our Instagram at PodCairns. But I'd like to close and thank the EDI committee for all the fabulous work you've done over the years, for organising this with the Queensland chapter, thank you, but also for the opportunity to represent regional membership to be here. I'm also really glad this is being live streamed because we have so many female architects and graduates in cities like Cairns, Townsville, Rockhampton, Toowoomba. So making this effort to live stream is not only broadening the Institute's reach, this is equity in action. Thank you.
Thank you, Belinda. Thank you for sharing those beautiful insights and stories about the way that POD works. Now we've come to our last speaker of the morning. I would like to welcome to the stage Dr. Kavita Gonzalez. Kavita is Head of Sustainability, APAC at Populous, where she leads sustainability strategy across major sports, civic and precinct projects throughout Asia Pacific. One of her side hustles is a deep commitment to balancing the scales in practice leadership. Through co-creating the Parla Pool Leadership Program Working Group, she hopes to chart equitable, collaborative and culturally informed leadership pathways within the profession, fostering other architecture and thereby other worlds. Now, I've had a little bit of a sneak peek into what Kavita has in store for us this morning, and I'm very excited. So please welcome her to the stage.
All right, showtime. So what I am about to do will only work if you will all join me. I hope you will join me. I hope you will join us. And I hope you will join. I'm going to request the Quidditch team to please get up and take their places. Spread out, spread out, spread out, spread out. Yeah, spread out. And I'm going to ask all of you to get up, if you can, and stand and fill up the spaces between them, from the wall on that end to everyone. Yeah. So the idea is that you stand in the middle over there if you're able to, away from your tables. It's a bit of a squeeze, but I really encourage you to do it. This is amazing. I love it. Okay. So I would like for you to look at who's standing next to you. Link your arms if you would like to. Hold hands. You can give hugs. All right. All right. I will also share that in the beginning, I might say some things, only in the beginning, that might be a bit triggering. So please take care of yourself. Close your ears or leave the room. Do what is best for you. The other options are link your hands tighter, squeeze your hands firmer, hug generously. So I begin. I am a straight, neurodiverse, cisgendered woman of color who practices architecture, especially the kind that is supposed to create futures. I am lucky to have come here from many countries and to have made a home here. The country of the Turrbal and Yagara people has held me, welcomed me, and for that I am deeply grateful. Because when you move across places, you begin to understand something about belonging. That belonging is not just where you arrive. It is where you are allowed to stand, where your voice is heard, where your knowledge is trusted. Now this part could be a bit triggering, and I promise to let you know when it ends. Because in my career as a practitioner in architecture, I have been told or asked, what do you know? You are not from here. What do you know? You surprisingly know your stuff. Your English is so good. Charles recommended you, so I want to see what he sees in you. You're very confident for someone at your level. Oh, you have practiced architecture. You know nothing about research. Oh, you have done research all these years. You don't know architecture. You are scary. You are intimidating. Or you are criticizing a thing. You are ungrateful. You should be grateful. How did she get to that position? She must be dash with dash. She is a dash, dash, and dash. She is difficult. What do you really know? All of this from men and women in the profession. This is where the triggering part ends, hopefully. Across meeting rooms, whispered over beers, laughed around in corners, all of them asking the same question: how did she get here? And when you hear these words often enough, you begin to understand something about the profession. Architecture is a discipline that prides itself on imagination, on vision, and yet sometimes our rooms are so small. Small in who we listen to, whose expertise we recognize, whose leadership we are comfortable with. These words, spoken lightly, dismissed as jokes, framed as feedback, that's my favorite one. They build small walls. Walls around belonging, around credibility, around whose knowledge counts. And yet, despite all of this, I know, and I'm here to tell you, we are bound together by the greatest design challenge of our time, the climate crisis. And the climate crisis is not a problem that can be solved by smaller rooms. Because the systems that created this crisis were not accidental. They were intentionally designed. Designed through systems that were extractive, systems that separated people from place, powered by what scholars called gendered racial capitalism. I encourage you to look that up. Systems that decided that the land and labor must be taken. And architecture is a reflection of those systems. We are all complicit in all of it. But the climate crisis asks something very different of us now. It asks us to widen the circle, to listen across cultures, across disciplines, across ways of knowing. We need to listen to the scientists, to indigenous knowledge holders, to communities who have lived with land for generations, to the architects who have built more with less, in lesser means, in geopolitical conflict, in environmental disaster. You need to start talking to us sooner, to understand the quiet intelligence of the earth itself. It will not be solved by the many billions of revenue made through decarbonization by 2035. Because climate change is a design problem, it is a systems problem, it is a relationship problem between you all, between us all. All the work that we have shared today by Karen and Belinda is asking us for new imaginations, new systems, new futures. We can see the world today, and I will say the elephant in the room, it is a shit show by those in charge. The decisions in the world today are failing our children and their children. So it is imperative that the future we create, it will require an unimaginable humility, collaboration, accepting that certain knowledge systems and worldviews have failed the collective. The new worlds we create will come from other landscapes, other cultures, other lived experiences. Sometimes the people who are seen as out of place, considered weird, or anything else, are exactly what the moment requires. Because this future, it is a shared project. Many of us in this room will raise the future. Nearly all of us will build it. So make the rooms bigger. Expand the realm of voices. Instead of asking, how did she get here, ask a far more important question. How do we work together? Because the climate crisis doesn't really ask us where we are from. It is asking what we will do now that we are here. And the answer, I hope, is that we build a future large enough for all of us together. I want you to remember this moment right now. Our silence will not protect us. So I need you to remember how to be angry, how to rage, to create change. Look at the people beside you, at your table, in this room. These are not just your colleagues. These are your comrades, your friends. Hold each tighter, squeeze that hug. As when the work ahead becomes difficult, because it will, remember that you are not standing alone. You're standing with your people in solidarity. To remember this moment, I will now ask Alana to take a photograph across the entire room. With the completion of this photograph, this piece comes to an end. Thank you for being part of this work, which I call the impossible photo.
Thank you, Kavita. That was incredible. Thank you for re-energising the room this morning. So now, door prizes. We have a number of door prizes to be won today. Now, Bond Associate Professor Elizabeth Musgrave will join me on stage to help present the prizes. But she's not here, no. Should I just move on to the other ones? Oh, okay. Associate Professor Elizabeth Musgrave, I'll get you up on stage to help me present the first of the prizes. So Bond University's Executive Learning Unit generously offers a complimentary enrolment in the Women in Leadership micro-credential course valued at $585. This course has been designed for women at pivotal stages of their careers, providing practical tools, expert insights, and a powerful network to help a recipient take her next leadership step. So if everyone can check under your plate, if you have a blue sticker on the bottom of your plate, you are the winner of the amazing door prize from Bond University.
Well, come on.
Yes, come on up. Thank you. Okay, so that's not all. There should be some more coloured stickers. If you have one of the 3 red stickers, you've won the Leaf Door Prize. So please come to the stage to collect. There should be 3 red dots, I hope. Pink is coming up next. So, under the bread and butter plates, if...
This one where
the red ones, yeah.
the red one that was now.
Yes. I know the red was leaf, and then the pink was now.
Yeah.
I heard somebody talking about a pink dot. So the person with the pink dot, you have won the lucky door prize from NOW, if you want to come to the stage. Hi. This was it?
Yeah, so I think we've just got our
Ah, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, hello. We'll come and see you.
Okay. So no red dots have appeared?
Yellow dots.
Oh, was it yellow?
It's yellow.
Yellow dots. So if there's 3 yellow dots or red dots or really I think any other colour, come to stay. Congratulations. There you are. Congratulations. Okay, so now that we've done the coloured dot situation, I would like to welcome our speakers, Karen, Belinda and Kavita, back to the stage for the Q&A portion of the morning. So come on up. Now, we've got a roving mic that will be sort of walked around. They're over there.
Do you need that?
Yes, yeah, and then we've got the roving mic for guests. So I also want to thank our speakers this morning. We have presents to give you from Metal Women. Metal Women is a national gift delivery service employing women who are experiencing homelessness due to domestic and family violence. They equip survivors of domestic and family violence with the skills, confidence and financial security required to secure and maintain employment and in turn safe and stable housing. So once we've completed this morning, I'll hand over the beautiful gifts supplied by Metal. So I think we'll sort of warm the room up a little bit. The Quidditch committee has sort of put together a few starting questions. So I think I'll kick off this morning. I'm going to start with an easy one. Now, I apologise, this one wasn't in the sort of pre-prepared package, but it should be hopefully an easy one to answer. So I'm going to throw this to sort of all 3 of you. Now, you work in quite diverse areas of practice. So what has sort of drawn you to work in these sectors that your practice is known for?
First?
Yes.
For me, as I said, I grew up in Brisbane. Education was down here, but when I moved to Cairns, working regionally, I had the opportunity to work on a project in a remote area. It was Mornington Island. It was in about 2005, 2006. While up there, while the project director was meeting on the side about another project, unwork related, I said to him, I'd really like to go and sit in the Arts Centre with the women there. So I did. I sat there, and one of the women was Sally Gabori. That time I spent in that centre with women, talking in language, watching them paint, was really powerful for me as an introduction to working in remote settings in Aboriginal communities. And then much later on, I had the opportunity to meet up with Shanine Fanton, who's known for her work in working those environments, and we co-founded POD. So our focus turned to that type of work predominantly, other projects as well, but we enjoyed working in those spheres and became quite known for that. So that was, I guess, really the basis of that journey. And I'm very lucky or very privileged to have acquired a couple of Sally Gaboris from those early years before she came really famous. So it reminds me of my start in working in those settings.
I think I've shared a lot about my story and how I got to where we are, but I suppose to found KO & Co, what drove me to do that is that I firmly believe we should make a change and make a difference with good design. And so having the opportunity to found a practice that focuses solely on that, so we're very clear that we won't do any work for developers, which was a very big call to make early in the career because I come from a commercial practice where that's a lot of what we did. But yeah, that's the core value of what we do.
Yeah, building on that, I think what drives me in my work is my set of values, and that's something I'm finding out in the last 1 year, how important they are and how they are non-negotiable. And that really drives the work that I do. As I mentioned, it's not easy. And so, and there are a number of stakeholders with different varying priorities, and the job is to bring them together and look to the future. So I think of hope as a value that needs to be actioned out, and that's what keeps me in the work.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question before heading out to the crowd. This one is maybe a little bit more harder hitting. What trends are you noticing in the industry, in workplaces, that you feel are affecting people's well-being?
Where do you start? Gosh. I really love the work of Parla and the research that they've done around all aspects of equality, equity and well-being. It's long needed to get that sort of data. But I think from a regional perspective, there's a lot of general factors which impact our well-being as professionals. In the regional setting, recruitment, getting enough people to come to the regions to work on architecture has become really challenging after COVID. During COVID, it was the thing, tree change, escape the big cities. There's a lot to be said for working in regions. The opportunities are quite different to cities. The diversity of projects, the scale of projects, the places you get to work. And because we're mostly small to medium-sized firms, people don't get pigeonholed in doing particular tasks. There's the opportunity to really ramp up your skills from an early stage. So I would say if you're having trouble getting a contract admin experience or diversity of experience and you're working towards registration, have a good think about moving to a region to practice, because you'll find that there. The other more general factor, I think, is, again, since COVID, we all like to forget it, but I keep talking about it. It feels like you have to put twice as much energy into keeping projects on the rails than you used to do. All the disruptions, the cost escalation, all impact the flow of a project. They stop start. And that workload impacts everybody, and for us it really comes back to it's so important to have a good workplace culture and focus on team well-being, so we can look after each other, because otherwise we're at risk of doing ourselves great harm, I think.
That's second part of Belinda's response is spot on. The other thing that affects our wellbeing in the office is cost escalation significantly. So delivering social and affordable housing. The first project that I did was in 2005 and the unit cost was $204,000, if that. 2020, so Cornwall Street that I put up, I think from memory it was about $310,000, and now we're looking at $650,000 to $700,000 for a one-bedroom apartment, which is incredible. So how do you still deliver good design with value management and do amazing things with paint?
So because I'm conscious that I've only perhaps been in the architecture industry over here for around 3 to 4 years, I tapped into the brain trust of Justine Clark of Parlour to get a more nuanced response. And I have a list, I promise it's short. So some of the things she said is struggles to even get into the workforce are huge for students and grads, particularly those who come from a non-Anglo background and those without personal connections. And this has been feedback from the wine. To add to this point, I would add to this point that if they do get jobs, particularly those from non-Anglo backgrounds, they are put in an impossible position to prove themselves with the hopeful dream of either being recognized or provided a visa to live here. There is no such thing as work-life balance or even burnout for them. Another issue that Justine raised was low pay rates that are a big issue for people trying to make life in major cities, which then means probably moving to the region, which is excellent. But big numbers from the profession are moving into project management and design management, so we're losing talent, basically. And these project management and design management jobs, they offer better hours, more flexibility, and a lot more dollars. A lot of dollar signs, yeah. And the fourth one is the ongoing frustration over unequal access to opportunity. Who gets invited to the meeting room, who is seen, who gets to speak up in a room, all of that matters in terms of opportunity. So yeah, that's the list.
Thank you. Now, Becky, you have some microphones in hand. So do we have any questions in the audience that you have for our panel members? Because I do have a list of backup questions, but if people do have anything that they want to ask, oh yes, we've got a few.
Thank you so much for your presentations today. They're really inspiring. I just wondered, as a key outcome or a key driving factor that you're trying to achieve, is there anything you think local government could do to help support those outcomes?
We don't do a lot of work with local government, so probably not well placed to answer that directly, but I think all levels of government, I can say. I think there are many things that state government departments can do better. We've touched on, Peter said architects are leaving the profession to become project managers. I think in some ways that's a good thing because over the years I've experienced projects that are being managed from unnamed state government departments with people in the place that simply don't have the qualifications or the experience to do the job well, and they get in the way. So I think the more architects step into those spaces, probably the better, but we do still need architects to do the architecture work. I think procurement has a lot of opportunity for improvement. The way processes like DNC are rolled out or favoured across the board, different project scales, I don't feel, certainly in the regions, is necessarily appropriate, particularly when you're talking about a tiny project in a remote setting, and in the context, the current context, where you've got time pressures, time is money, construction escalation, the disruption of stop-starting a project at this stage to re-tender it and tender on work from other people with the inherent knowledge loss too of changing teams just seems to be incredibly inefficient to me. So I think there's many opportunities to improve procurement processes and leverage the knowledge and the ability of your principal consultants, I think, yeah.
I think local governments, certainly the ones I've experienced with, Brisbane City Council, Moreton Bay, Ipswich, they are at Logan, they're doing good things in terms of infrastructure charges, reduced car parking. BCC is reviewing the low medium density zoning around how to make the missing middle and gentle density work. So I think everyone's on the right track. I think the state government having a very ambitious target in housing is helping that.
I think I'll just stick to the thread I'm on. So I guess opening up employment opportunities would be a big one for people who come from different backgrounds, different visa situations. So that would be a good one. Yeah.
I just thought of another one, sorry. Saw Lisa there and thought, hang on a second. Local government, city architects, we need more. When we have architects in those positions, we've got advocates at the coalface. The ones that I know of that are in working in local government, their skills are appreciated, and we certainly are very thankful for having someone there who can advocate for the profession.
Thank you. Now I saw another hand go up. Yes, if you want to.
So most of the things that you talked about today were social justice issues. I was going to ask about why you think women are drawn to those issues and why we have to lead that charge so often in the profession. It's kind of taking on an extra role and extra work for us, and often things that aren't as well paid.
That's an interesting observation, and maybe why my view on the work I do is different. So I've never really felt in the last 13 years of being in a room full of men, because most not-for-profits are run by women. So I sat at a working group table recently where there was 12 not-for-profits represented, and there was one male as a director of that. Now, I think inherently that means that deadlines are perhaps a little bit easier. There's government deadlines, but there's real project deadlines, and everyone around the table acknowledges that women have to juggle multiple things. Have I gone completely off tangent? Well, that's just great. Yeah. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of opportunity for women. If only every discipline worked in the same way as not-for-profits do, I think social justice would just happen.
A lot of reasons. Maybe one of them is we're enculturated to be carers, supporters. That's part of our socio-cultural context that we're brought up in. It's not always the case, I think, but it's probably a factor. I think with that though, certainly for me, with time, I've learned, usually at the exit from a relationship with someone who's a drug or alcohol abuser, or someone who's a narcissist, that you can't see it. Sometimes we're in the middle of it. It's not till you get out the other end that you actually can name it and see what it's done. So I think if we're enculturated into those roles, we also really need to make sure that we understand the dynamics and how to set boundaries, so we're not disadvantaging ourselves in those roles.
Yeah, just building on what Belinda said, I think we're around inculcation. Men are thought to do more serious business things, whereas women are thought to care. And so that explains why we do certain kinds of work, and that also shows up in leadership. The people who do the caring are not necessarily seen as leaders. So that's something I think we really need to think about, who we want to be and how we inculcate that younger. Because even in design, I almost see that when we're designing, it is the women who care about universal design, making sure the users are heard, making sure they're in there. It's not that the others don't care, it's just, I think they are thinking about different priorities. And even that's not a bad thing, but it's just that how do we prioritize towards caring when we're facing issues like toxic masculinity, manosphere, and how that's coming out into the world, and what I want to come back to our children, what our children are seeing. Yeah.
Motherboard again.
I love that.
You got me thinking. Very, very early on, and probably one of the reasons Pod was formed, we wanted to be the change we wanted to see, is came to the realisation architecture can be really hard work. You don't get to become a billionaire being an architect either. So if we're going to be doing the work, we might as well be doing something meaningful that we can enjoy, build relationships, and deliver some meaningful outcomes for people who need it. So certainly from our position, the practice position, we get a lot of joy from the type of work we do.
Thank you. That's a really lovely sentiment. I think, what's the point? Now, I am conscious of time. Becky, do you think we... Yeah? Yep. We'll go out for one more question if there is. But if not, I think that is essentially where I then invite Kim Richards to the stage to finish off our proceedings. So thank you one more time to our panel and to our speakers. Yeah. I'll just get you to stay here while we present you with your gifts. Thank you so much again for all of your wonderful insights this morning. It's been such a pleasure getting you all together and hearing from you. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. Thank you, Brendan. I get the opportunity to do the vote of thanks. Can I start by thanking everybody for being with us here this morning on Yagara and Turrbal land? And can I say how delighted this year the Institute has been to live stream this event to all of our regional friends and colleagues across Queensland. I think it's amazing to be able to share the power of the three speakers that we've had here today. Events like this don't happen without our very good friends and partners, so can I thank our major partners Lysite and Fielders, event partners Ace, Stone and Tiles. Make sure you check out your little goodie bags. I think there's coasters for your coffee or your beer or whichever way you like to take your drink. To our partners Leaf for the beautiful hand creams and for the lucky door prizes. Also to NAUF and to Bond University. Thank you again. To the Khalil staff, thank you for putting on a very wonderful morning in such a beautiful setting. Can I thank our three speakers? I think if there's anything we all should make sure we walk out of this room today when it comes to whether you take the theme of balancing the scales or giving to gain, is that there is a real call to action and that there is power in the collective. And I think if you didn't feel it when you were linking arms, I would be very surprised. There is absolute power in the collective. So when you leave here today, please remember, I think, the call to action that have come from all three of our speakers this morning. So could you put your hands together and give them a round of applause? Where's our Quidditch team? Stand up quickly in your spot, because I think we're the last barrier between here and everybody getting back to the office to put those calls of action into place. Thank you very much for all of the work that you've done in putting this together. To my team in Becky and Judy, thank you very much for putting this together. Finally, on a personal note, I'm absolutely delighted to be in my first day of week 6 as the Executive Leader for the Queensland Institute of Architects. There is so much good work for us to do. Queensland is a very exciting place to be as we head to the 2032 Olympics. 2026 is going to be a massive year with the with the National Architecture Conference being held here in Queensland for only the second time ever. So we have a very big year and a lot of big years ahead of us. There's a lot of work to do in advocating for the profession and making sure that we stay the strong community that this room demonstrates today. So thank you all very much for being here, and I look forward to engaging with you over 2026 and well into the future. Thank you.